By the time Nell Mercer found the boy under her kitchen table, he had eaten the cold heel of bread, licked gravy from a stranger's plate, and hidden 2 dried apples inside a coat so torn the road seemed to have kept part of him. He froze with the tin plate in both hands while beef stew breathed on the stove and 3 riders moved along the far fence line like men who already believed what was hers would soon be theirs. The boy was all elbows, dust, and frightened gray eyes. 10 or 11. Old enough to know what boots usually meant when they stopped outside a door. If you mean to run, Nell said, keeping the shotgun low, don't choose the front door. They'll see you from the yard. That startled him more than the gun had. You ain't gonna throw me out? Before we go further, settle in wherever you are tonight and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. It always does a body good to know who is gathered close when a hard story starts. Nell listened to the wind moving through the cottonwoods by Clear Branch Creek and the hoofbeats drawing nearer. 3 years of widowhood had taught her what empty houses sounded like. This one had suddenly quit being empty. That depends, she said. You bring trouble with you? He glanced toward the window. Then I reckon you do. She filled a bowl, broke a biscuit in half, and set both on the table. Sit. He did not move. I can eat outside. The words hit harder than they should have. Nell thought of another child. Another kitchen, another winter morning when fever had burned so hot it turned a little girl quiet. You can eat where the table is, she said. Only then did he crawl out. Rope burn ringed one wrist. His lip was split. Ash clung in his hair. The riders reached the yard before he sat. Nell stepped onto the porch with the shotgun in both hands. Buck Hanley sat his horse in the moonlight, hat shoved back, mouth curved in that mean little half-smile he wore when he was sure someone weaker had nowhere to go. 2 riders spread behind him. Evening, Ms. Mercer, Buck called. We're looking for county property. Funny, Nell said. I was just standing here wondering what lie I'd hear first. Buck's smile thinned. Little gray-eyed boy. Stole from Mr. Creed's cookhouse. Escaped lawful transfer to the Sheridan Poor Farm. We aim to return him. A child ain't a sack of grain. Law says different. From inside the house came the soft clink of a spoon against a bowl, then silence. Buck heard it. His eyes lifted to the kitchen window. Nell raised the shotgun 1 inch. You step onto this porch, and your boss can explain to the undertaker why your widow needs a blacker dress. Wind rattled loose tin on the smokehouse. Somewhere in the dark, a mare struck the corral rail. Buck spat into her yard. Silas Creed rides out himself at sunup. He says if you're hiding what belongs to him, he'll take it personal. I'd hate to burden him. You're behind on your banknote, ain't you? Would be a shame if a woman alone had more trouble than she could carry. When they rode away, Nell bolted the door and found the boy standing beside the table with the bowl still in his hands, as if he expected food to be taken back if he didn't finish fast enough. Name, she said. He hesitated. Ben Pike. Truth. He nodded. She set the gun aside. Good. I don't waste stew on lies unless they're entertaining. That nearly pulled a smile from him. She cleaned his wrist with warm water. He flinched at the touch more from habit than pain. Buck lied, Ben said. I know. I stole food, but I didn't steal what they're after. He drew out an oilskin packet. Inside were 3 ledger pages, charred black at the edges. Brands, tallies, dates, sales. Silas Creed's Running Sea stood at the top of 1 page. Nell knew cattle books. Her late husband had taught her the difference between a bad count and a crooked one. My pa kept books for Mr. Creed, Ben whispered. He found numbers that didn't belong. Said he was fixing to tell the stock inspector. Then remembered Mr. Creed is the stock inspector. Your father? Ben stared at the table. They burned the wagon with him in it. Pa shoved these at me and said run to somebody decent. I didn't know how to tell which folks was. Nell read the pages again. Small ranch brands altered after shipment. Dead winter blamed for cattle that had likely been stolen first. She thought of neighbors ruined after the big die-up, of Silas Creed buying their notes cheap while they buried good animals and better hopes. Then she thought of the child in front of her, eating like he expected hunger to come back before dawn. She took down a second bowl. Ben frowned. That one's not for me. No, she said. That's for later. Around here, if a person belongs in a house, somebody saves him a plate. His face went still. Nobody ever saved me a plate before. Outside, a coyote started up beyond the creek. Nell met his eyes. Sit down every night, she said quietly, and you'll be expected at supper. She spent the dark hours before dawn making fear earn its keep. She hid the ledger beneath the false bottom of the seed chest, saddled Mercy, checked the rifle, and brought down the red-stitched wool blanket she had not touched since Rose died. Ben slept on the settle by the stove with one boot still on and a hand inside his coat. Nell laid the blanket over him. He woke instantly, eyes wide. "You're safe till morning," she said. At first light, Buffalo looked like every Plains town trying not to admit weather and debt had beaten half the county. Nell had been in the hayloft over Mrs. Klein's mule barn before going into town proper. Mrs. Klein handed her hot coffee and said, "Buck Hanley asked after a boy before breakfast. I told him any child worth chasing by grown men was worth hiding first." At First Territorial Bank, Hollis Finch arranged his face into sympathy too neat to trust. "About your note, Dash. I know about my note. I want to know whether Silas Creed has bought it." Finch aligned one paper. "A lender may entertain inquiries." "So he has. This is difficult country for a woman alone. Consolidation may be the kindest answer for all parties." What he meant was plain. "My husband paid half that note before he died," Nell said. "Weather does not honor prior effort." "No, but decent men ought to." At last he said, "I can give you 10 days. No more." "Why?" His eyes flicked toward the window. Buck Hanley waited across the street. "Because," Finch said quietly, "that is 10 more than Creed asked me to allow." Sheriff Otis Dobbins smelled of tobacco and compromise. He slid a folded order across the desk. "Temporary custodial transfer from the Sheridan Poor Farm. No proper description. No real signature worth trusting. This would let Creed claim any hungry child in Wyoming," Nell said. Dobbins lowered his voice. "Then let him have this one and be done. You know he killed that boy's father." Dobbins looked away. "No is a difficult word." "Then try coward." His jaw tightened. "I know Creed holds notes on 6 families and enough power in this county to make honest people starve. Men bend to the hand that feeds them. Men choose. Women with overdue mortgages ought to choose careful. Hand the boy over. Creed says he'll forgive the interest on your note." There it was. The price of decency, spoken plain. When Nell found Ben in the hayloft afterward, he sat with his knees drawn up and a barn cat asleep against his boot. "Well," he asked. "We have 10 days before the bank comes for the ranch," she said. "Creed won't wait 10 hours. Ben nodded. "I can leave." The simple bravery in it nearly undid her. "No, it's what I'm used to." She sat across from him. "There's a difference between enduring a thing and calling it right." She handed him cheese and a knife. "Your father teach you books?" "Enough to know Mr. Creed changed brands after cattle were sold. Pa used to say you can fool a buyer, but you can't fool the memory of the man who raised the herd. Your father was right." Ben cut the cheese too thin and licked it off the blade before it fell. "Why are you helping me?" Because she had not saved Rose. Because Caleb had ridden into a wideout for a doctor and never ridden back. Because grief had turned her heart into a locked room, and this child had walked in carrying a key shaped like hunger. Instead, she said, "Because I'd like to keep respecting myself." By noon, Buffalo knew. Old Mateo at the livery muttered that Buck Hanley had bought enough kerosene to light trouble, not lamps. Pastor Green's sister pressed a parcel of ham, peaches, and pie into Nell's hands and said, "For the boy. This town can't keep a secret longer than coffee stays hot, but some secrets are safer in women's mouths than men's." That night, Nell set 3 plates on the table before she thought better of it. Her hand stopped over the third. She had not laid 3 places since the week after Rose was buried. Ben noticed at once. "You got someone coming?" "No." She started to lift the plate away. "You don't have to if you ain't ready," he said softly. She left the plate where it was. They ate bean stew and cornbread in the hush of lamplight. When Ben reached for a second piece of bread, he asked permission with his eyes. Nell slid the basket toward him. He whispered, almost to the table, "Folks'll feed a dog on the porch before they'll let a boy drop crumbs on the floor." The line settled between them. "Not in this house," Nell said. A knock came then. Silas Creed stepped in when she opened the door no wider than her shoulder. Black coat brushed clean. Gloves the color of old blood. A silver watch chain bright against his vest. "Evening, Mrs. Mercer," he said. "I came to offer mercy. I'd rather you offered distance." His pale eyes moved to the third plate and back again. "I hold your note at the bank. By tomorrow noon, I can own every post from your creek to the North Meadow. Or you can hand over the boy, sign your lower water rights to me, and keep your house." From the pantry alcove behind her came no sound at all. Ben had gone to stone. You mean keep your lies standing? Nell said. Creed took one slow step closer. You think a widow and a half-starved boy can ruin me? I think men built on theft shouldn't sleep easy. The world has no habit of rewarding women who mistake stubbornness for power. Nell lifted the shotgun. Then maybe the world is overdue for a new habit. Something flashed in his face then. Sunrise, he said. After that, I stopped being civil. When he rode away, Ben emerged from the pantry pale as flour. He'll burn us out, he said. Nell looked around the kitchen she had held together with work and memory. Then she looked at the boy. Maybe. But if a man keeps taking and everybody keeps stepping back, pretty soon he mistakes the whole earth for his. Ben stared at her. Pa used to say that. Then your pa was worth listening to. She drew the curtains tight. Tell me something. What would you have done in my place? Would you keep running? Or would you stand before the running swallowed what was left of you? If you were sitting at that table, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. Because there comes a point in some lives when safety and self-respect stop sharing a room. I'd be scared, Ben said. So would I. I'd stand anyway. Then that's two of us. The storm came before dawn on a night, so clear the stars looked hammered into the sky. The dog barked twice. Cut off. Then came the smell. Kerosene. Nell was out of bed and reaching for the rifle before the first bottle shattered against the barn wall. Flames raced up dry boards. Horses screamed in the corral. Boots, she snapped. Ben was already at the kitchen door, blanket around his shoulders, eyes huge with terror. Another bottle burst. Heat struck the house windows hard enough to make the panes tick. She yanked the oilskin packet from the seed chest and shoved it inside Ben's shirt. Back door. Stay by me. Outside, sparks whipped through the yard. At the barn door, a gelding slammed himself against the rail, whites showing. Nell laid one hand against his neck and spoke low into the chaos. Her gift had never been breaking horses. It had been reading panic without joining it. Easy. Feel me. Easy now. The gelding shuddered, then stilled long enough for her to cut the lead and throw the gate. The remuda burst free like a dark river and thundered straight toward the front yard, exactly where she wanted them. Men cursed. One horse went down with a scream. Run, Nell said. She and Ben ducked through the narrow cattle lane behind the smokehouse as shots cracked through the dark. Dirt kicked at her skirts. Ben stumbled. She hauled him upright and dragged him to the creek, crossing no outsider trusted because the bank looked soft until you hit the hidden gravel shelf beneath. They splashed across. A rider checked hard at the edge behind them, his mount refusing what it could not see. Mercy came ghosting out of the cottonwoods, and Nell hauled Ben up in front of her. Behind them, the barn roof groaned. Ahead, the cottonwood shadows opened toward Miller's Rise. Then another sound rolled over the crackle of fire. Wagon wheels. From the ridge road came Mrs. Klein's voice, sharp as a church bell struck in anger. Otis Dobbins, if you mean to watch a woman burned out, at least take that badge off first so decent people know what sort of man you are. Sheriff Dobbins was in the yard. The revelation hit Nell like a fist. Men like him did worse with silence than they ever did with ink. They rode blind through the trees and reached the lined shack before dawn. Ben shook now that the running had stopped. Nell wrapped him in a buffalo robe and checked the one window. Will the house burn too? He asked. She thought of Caleb's hat by the door, Rose's cup on the shelf. Maybe. He lowered his head. This is my fault. She crossed the room in 2 steps. No. Bad men don't become less bad because they choose a different victim. At full light, hoofbeats sounded below the rise. For riders. Buck Hanley. Silas Creed. The latch rattled once. Mrs. Mercer, Creed called. I'm finished being civil. Hand over the boy and the pages, or I set this shack alight and let weather finish what I start. Nell did the numbers at a glance. 1 door. 1 window. Dry grass. 4 armed men. A child beside her. Then she saw the old crawl space under the stove brick. Too small for her. Big enough for Ben. She gripped his face in both hands. Listen, you take the pages. You get to Mrs. Klein or Pastor Green. You bring everybody to the stock pens at noon. Everybody. I ain't leaving you. Outside came the slosh of kerosene. You are if you mean to make this matter, she said. Can you do it? His eyes filled. He looked angry about that. I'm scared. So am I. She kissed his forehead. Crawl scared. He vanished beneath the stove just as the first splash struck the wall. Nell fired through the door at the kerosene can. Buck Hanley yelled. Horses reared. Fire leapt sideways in the dirt instead of climbing the boards. The blast bought seconds. She kicked out the back crate stack, squeezed through the service hatch behind the water barrel, and dropped hard into frost and sage. A shot whipped past her ear. She ran bent low down the wash as Creed shouted behind her. If Ben made it, noon would decide everything. The quiet after violence never comes all at once. It seeps in through whatever cracks danger leaves behind. By the time the church bell struck 11, Nell sat in Pastor Green's storeroom with her left forearm bandaged, one temple singed, and a chipped cup of coffee cooling in her hands. She had reached town on foot through the wash and hidden the last mile in a laundry wagon. Ben was there. That was the first mercy. He sat on a crate across from her in a coat too big for him. He kept looking at her bandaged arm, as if guilt might unravel the cloth. I told them, he said. Like you said. Everybody. Pastor Green closed the door. The stock pens are filling. Creed thinks you mean to surrender in public so he can look lawful collecting. Good, Nell said. Mrs. Klein set a covered plate beside her. Ham, biscuits, pie. Nell looked at it, then at Ben. He looked back uncertainly. Nell broke a biscuit in half and pushed the plate between them. Sit down. He sat. For one quiet minute they ate from the same plate, while voices gathered outside like weather. Ham salty and warm. Pie crust soft from steam. Then Ben said, almost shyly, a place doesn't become yours when your boots are by the bed. It becomes yours when somebody notices you're hungry before you ask. Mrs. Klein made the sort of small sound people make when they are trying not to cry in front of company. Nell looked at the boy, at the rope burn healing on his wrist, at the care with which he still chewed as if each bite required permission. She had spent 3 years believing love was what ruined people, because once you loved a thing the world could find it. She saw now that grief had lied. Love was not the weakness. Love was the only reason anything in this world was worth defending. She touched his wrist lightly. When this is done, she said, if the county leaves me a roof and the Lord leaves me breath, you can stay. Not till spring. Not till things settle. Stay. His face emptied of every practiced expression. Why? Because leaving you to the people who've had you so far would offend me. That did it. Tears sprang to his eyes. He scrubbed at them furiously. Don't make a fuss, he muttered. Wouldn't dream of it. If this story is moving you, you're exactly who it was written for. A like and a subscribe is how you tell us to keep bringing these hard-won endings home. Warmth had entered the room, but safety had not. Outside, cattle shifted in the yards and townspeople crowded the rails. Creed had chosen noon because public humiliations impressed weak men. Nell meant to give him one he would not survive. Stay behind me, she told Ben as they stepped into the light. He shook his head. No, ma'am. I run when running helps. Not when it helps him. There was his harder choice. The stock pens had not seen such a crowd since autumn shipping before the die-up. Silas Creed stood on the auction platform as if he owned not just the yard but the habit of people gathering when he called. Sheriff Dobbins beside him looked sick enough to confess. Banker Finch held Nell's mortgage papers in a leather folio like documents might keep blood off his cuffs. When the crowd saw Nell walking in scorched and straight-backed with Ben beside her, a murmur ran through them. Creed smiled. Mrs. Mercer. Sensible after all. You asked for the boy in public, Nell said. You can hear him in public. This is not a trial. No, she said. It's an accounting. She nodded once to Mateo Ruiz at the far gate. He hauled it open. 30 head of cattle were driven into the side pen, thin from winter and ugly with overbrands. Running C burned over Lazy J, Running C over Barty, Running C over Widow Harper's circle brand. A sound went through the crowd then. Recognition, grief, anger finding a name. Nell lifted her voice. My husband taught me brands because numbers don't mean much if you can't read the flesh they belong to. Silas Creed changed entries after sale and changed hides after death. He used winter for his accomplice and hunger for his disguise. Creed laughed too quickly. Those are auction strays. Then let the owners name them. Widow Harper stepped forward first. Brindled cow with the white blaze calves late and hooks left if you crowd her. Old Jasper Teal pointed from the rail. Red steer in the back lost half an ear to frost as a yearling. Then more voices. One after another. Brand after brand. History returning to the bodies that had carried it all along. Ben stepped forward and drew the oilskin packet from inside his shirt. His hands shook, but his voice did not. My pa kept these. Mr. Creed changed the books after he sold cattle that weren't his. Pa told him no more. Then our wagon burned. Creed moved then, fast and ugly. He leapt from the platform, grabbed Ben by the coat, and hauled him close while drawing a pistol with his other hand. The whole yard inhaled. Back, Creed snapped. Ben went rigid, but he did not cry out. Nell felt the world narrow to the black mouth of the pistol beside the boy's temple and the terrible steadiness in her own hands. There are moments when a life turns on what a person refuses to surrender. She stepped forward. I'll kill him, Creed said. No, Nell answered. You'll try. Love steadied the hands despair only numbed. You built your life, she said, louder, on everybody believing they were alone. Look around. He did. One quick glance at the crowd. That was enough. Ben dropped his weight and drove his boot backward onto Creed's foot with all the spite in his thin body. Creed lurched. Nell moved. Not from luck. From years of work no one had applauded. Her shot struck the pistol clean from his hand. The gun spun into the mud. Buck Hamley lunged from the rail with a knife, but Mrs. Klein cracked him across the jaw with a cast-iron skillet she had apparently brought from the church kitchen. Buck went down hard to the roar of half the crowd. Sheriff Dobbins stood frozen. Nell turned the smoking rifle toward him. Choose now, Otis. The whole town watched. Cowardice thrives in private. It sweats in daylight. Dobbins looked at Creed in the mud, at the cattle in the pen, at the scorched woman and the rescued boy, and the faces of families whose hunger he had helped excuse. Then he drew his cuffs. Silas Creed, he said hoarsely, you are under arrest for fraud, arson, kidnapping, and suspected murder. Creed laughed once. You weak bastard. Maybe, Dobbins said, but not for another minute. The cuffs snapped shut. The yard erupted, not in chaos but release. Banker Finch tried to edge away with his folio, but Widow Harper caught his sleeve and said, Banker, I believe several valuations are about to be revisited. By sunset, First Territorial had voided Creed's claim on Nell's note pending investigation. Within a week agents rode up from Cheyenne and began peeling his books apart. 2 hidden deeds surfaced. 3 coerced mortgages collapsed. Buck Hamley discovered a sudden devotion to truth when faced with a cell beside the man he had served. Creed lost the stock inspector post, the contracts, the bank leverage, and finally his freedom. Men who had once laughed at ruined neighbors remembered brands with astonishing clarity once fear changed sides. Nell kept the ranch, the creek rights, the south pasture, and the stand of cottonwoods where Rose had once tied ribbons for the wind to play with. The town rebuilt her barn in 4 days. Mateo brought hinges. Pastor Green brought lumber. Even Sheriff Dobbins came with a shovel and an apology too rough to sound rehearsed. I don't ask you to forgive me, he said. Nell handed him a post-hole digger. Good. I'm too busy for that today. Ben watched the work from the porch at first, as if expecting kindness to expire by noon. It did not. On the 3rd evening, he set 3 plates on the table without being asked. Nell paused in the doorway. 3. He shrugged. 1 for you. 1 for me. 1 for remembering. She stood very still, then nodded and hung up her hat. Spring came honest that year. Not easy. Honest. Snowmelt thickened Clearbranch Creek until it ran loud over stone. Calves found their legs in wet grass. Nell rode fence lines while Ben bounced behind her on a patient sorrel pony. He learned sums at the kitchen table, brands in the yard, and how to ask for more biscuits with words instead of apology. When the county judge made the arrangement formal, he signed the name Ben Pike Mercer in a hand that shook only once, and Nell understood that some families begin not with blood, but with the first night someone saves you a place and means it. By late summer, lamplight spilled from the ranch house across the porch where their supper plates cooled, and the sound drifting into the dark was not loneliness at all, but the plain, sturdy music of people being expected home. Next time, we'll tell the story of a deaf seamstress sent west as if she were a burden to be hidden, until a scarred horse doctor heard the truth in the silence everyone else mistook for emptiness.